I died once. It happened in the freezing winter of 1982. I collapsed and froze on the front steps of Mark Vance's house while he, my husband, was inside by a warm fire with Sophia Ross from the Performing Arts Troupe. I had knocked on the door for 3 hours, but they simply pretended not to hear me. Then, suddenly, my eyes opened. I was standing in the military hospital, and it was an afternoon in the early winter of 1981, the very day I had first discovered the truth. My colleague David leaned toward me with a secretive air. "Clara, you'll never guess. Captain Vance came to the hospital yesterday and picked up the herbal soup you wanted me to give him." I tried to sound casual. "Oh, he took it. That's good." But a cold dread was already spreading through me. It had happened exactly like this in my previous life. David seemed hesitant to continue. "Actually," he said, lowering his voice, "I saw him take it over to the Performing Arts building. It looked like it was for that new girl, Sophia Ross. I heard him mention his stomach had been bothering him lately." The medical record book in my hand slipped and fell to the floor with a loud slap. In my past life, this news had sent me into a blind rage. I'd rushed over to their rehearsal, yelling and demanding answers, only to be met by Mark's annoyance and Sophia's well-acted tears. I had screamed until security removed me from the compound, and from that day on, I was labeled as irrational and unstable. This time, I just smiled. "David, can you help me with one more thing?" I pulled a brand new thermal container from my desk drawer. "This is a fresh batch of herbal soup I just made. Can you take it to the troupe and tell them it's specially prepared for the captain?" David frowned. "Isn't this the same as the one from yesterday?" "It's different," I said, my tone meaningful. "This one has something special added." That special ingredient was bitter apricot kernels. In a small dose, they were good for soothing coughs. But on an empty stomach and in a large quantity, they would cause violent vomiting and diarrhea for an entire day. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was deeply humiliating. Sure enough, less than 2 hours later, the entire military compound was buzzing. Sophia Ross had suddenly doubled over during a rehearsal, clutching her stomach in agony. Then, in front of everyone, she began to throw up. Even more shocking was the sight of Captain Mark Vance, forgetting his public image completely, scooping her up into his arms and sprinting toward the hospital. His panicked expression was a public spectacle for all to see. I was in my office organizing prescriptions when the head nurse burst in. "Dr. Shaw, the captain just brought a young woman to the emergency room. He's asking for you specifically." I stood up calmly. "Oh, what's her condition?" "Vomiting and diarrhea. Her face is as pale as a sheet," the head nurse whispered. "She hasn't stopped crying, and the captain looks like he's about to lose his mind." When I walked into the emergency room, Mark was hovering over Sophia's bedside. The moment he saw me, he shot up from his chair. "Clara, please, you have to check on her. She started feeling sick right after she had the soup you made." Sophia lay on the bed, her makeup streaked with tears, looking utterly miserable. When she saw me, she weakly reached for Mark's hand. "Mark, I feel so awful." "The soup I made?" I raised my eyebrows. "Which batch are you referring to?" Mark looked stunned for a moment. "The one you had David bring over." "Oh, that one," I said, casually flipping open the patient's chart. "That batch was prepared for you, Captain, for your chronic digestive problems. You didn't give your prescribed medicinal soup to this young woman, did you?" The emergency room fell silent. The other nurses exchanged glances, and a few started to whisper among themselves. Mark's face darkened. "You did this on purpose." "Did what on purpose?" I asked coolly. "You took something meant for your specific medical needs and gave it to someone else. The herbs in that soup were strong, intended to treat your condition. Sophia here is in her early 20s. How could her system possibly handle it?" Sophia began to cry harder. "Mark, does Dr. Shaw have something against me?" I stepped closer to the bed. "Miss Ross, how many times have we even spoken? I'm a military doctor and you are an actress. What kind of grudge could I possibly have against you? Let me just remind you that Mark Vance is a married man. The way you call him Mark this and Mark that. Don't you think it's a little inappropriate?" Just as I finished speaking, the door to the emergency room swung open. It was Mrs. Gable, the wife of the base commander and my godmother. No wonder the hospital is so lively today, she said, her eyes scanning the room before landing on Mark. Well, Captain Vance, I see you're quite invested in this. All for a girl from the performing arts troupe. It seems you've forgotten all about a soldier's dignity. The moment my godmother entered, the atmosphere in the room turned ice cold. Mark instinctively let go of Sophia's hand, stood at attention, and saluted. Ma'am, please don't misunderstand. My godmother sneered. I'm just here to see my goddaughter. And while I'm at it, I thought I'd see which little vixen has our military district's youngest regiment commander so completely charmed. Sophia's face turned even paler. She tried to sit up. Ma'am, you're mistaken. There's nothing going on between me and Commander Vance. Lie down. My godmother waved her hand dismissively. So young and already so frail. If you can't even handle dancing, what use are you to the troop? I spoke up calmly. Miss Ross accidentally ingested a medicinal soup that wasn't meant for her. She'll be fine once the IV drip is finished. Accidentally? My godmother looked at Mark with a knowing expression. And how exactly did this soup end up with her? Sweat began to form on Mark's forehead. It was my fault. I took the wrong one by mistake. I flipped open the logbook on the nearby table. But David told me that when you came to the hospital yesterday, you specifically asked if that soup was prepared by me. You only took it after he confirmed it was. There was never a shortage of people eager for drama in the military compound. By now, the hallway outside the emergency room was filled with onlookers, all whispering and trying to get a better view. I continued. Also, as I recall, Captain, you have chronic stomach problems that require a very strict diet. This herbal soup was prepared for your specific medical history. It had warming ingredients. Miss Ross, on the other hand, has a naturally warm constitution. Of course, a soup like that would cause problems for her. My godmother picked up where I left off. So what you're saying is Commander Vance knowingly gave medicine meant for his own illness to a young girl from the troop? Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd in the hallway. No wonder we've seen the captain going to the performing arts building so often lately. Dr. Shaw makes those special soups for him every day, and he gives them to someone else. Shh, keep your voice down. Mark's face cycled through shades of pale and red. Clara, let's go home. We can talk about this later. Home? I gave a cold laugh. Commander Vance, do you even remember that we have a home? How many times have you actually been home this past month? And every time you came back smelling of cheap perfume from the rehearsal hall, I told you I was making those soups for your health, to help your stomach, but you said the cafeteria food was fine. You wouldn't eat what I made, but you were happy to give it to another woman. Tell me, Mark Vance, what do you take me for? My voice wasn't loud, but every word was sharp and clear. Everyone in the room heard me. Sophia could no longer keep up her act. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at Mark with a pitiful expression. Mark, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I shouldn't have had my sister-in-law's soup. I smiled. Miss Ross, I'm the military wife here. Why do you insist on calling him Mark so affectionately? There are clear rules in the military. Superiors and subordinates must maintain a professional distance. You're a performer calling a commander by his first name. Aren't you afraid it will damage his future? That struck a nerve. In the military, matters of conduct and discipline were taken very seriously. For someone like Mark, young and with a promising career, a scandal like this could be ruinous. His expression finally changed. Enough, Clara. Stop being so unreasonable. Unreasonable? My godmother stepped forward. Mark Vance, why don't you tell us who is really being unreasonable here? Clara is the youngest attending physician at this hospital, an exceptional talent. I've watched her grow up. She gave up a promising future in the capital to follow you to this remote base. She's been here for 3 years. For what exactly? And how have you treated her in return? Mark had no answer. He just stood there in silence. I took a deep breath. Godmother, there's no need to say anymore. His heart isn't here with me anymore. There's no point in trying to hold on to someone who is already gone. As I turned to leave, I paused and looked back one last time. Oh, and Captain Vance, starting tomorrow, I won't be preparing any more medicinal soup for you. If your stomach acts up, you can find someone else. Perhaps Miss Ross can learn to make soup. She seems to care so much." Behind me, I could hear Sophia's sobbing and Mark's sharp, angry reprimands. I didn't look back. In my previous life, I'd lost everything on this very spot. My dignity and the respect of my peers. Not this time. This time, I would make sure everyone saw who had truly been wronged. After leaving the hospital, I went straight to the residential compound where we lived. Mark's mother, Eleanor Vance, was sitting in the courtyard enjoying the afternoon sun. The moment she saw me, her face lit up. "Clara, you're back. Why are you home so early?" In my past life, when I needed her support the most, this woman had sided with Sophia Ross. She had called me immature and told me I didn't understand the pressures a man faced. "I came back to pack my things," I said calmly. Eleanor froze. "Pack? Pack what things?" I didn't answer her. I walked straight into the house. 3 years as a military wife hadn't left me with much. I had a few changes of clothes, some medical books, and our wedding photos. I took the pictures down from the wall, one by one, tore them into pieces, and threw them into the trash bin. Eleanor followed me inside, shocked by the scene. "Clara, what are you doing? Did you and Mark have a fight?" "No fight," I said as I continued to pack my suitcase. "I've just finally seen things clearly." "What could be so serious?" she asked, grabbing my arm. "If something is wrong, you should talk to us. Mark has been so busy with work lately. You need to be more understanding." I stopped what I was doing and looked at her. "Your son took the herbal soup I spent hours preparing for his health and gave it to an actress. Then he carried her to the hospital in his arms in front of the entire compound. Tell me, how exactly should I be more understanding of that?" Eleanor's face changed. "What nonsense are you talking about? Mark would never do something like that." "Would he?" I replied flatly. "Why don't you go ask around the compound? Or better yet, ask the commander's wife. She was at the hospital and saw the whole thing." At the mention of Mrs. Gable, Eleanor's confidence faltered. In the strict hierarchy of the military base, the commander's wife's word was as good as law. Just then, we heard hurried footsteps outside. Mark stormed in. The moment he saw me packing, he rushed over and grabbed my wrist. "Clara, stop this!" "Let go!" I said coldly, staring him straight in the eye. "I won't," Mark said, his eyes red. "Please, just listen to me. Sophia was feeling unwell. I just felt bad for her." I laughed a humorless sound. "And what about me? Don't I deserve any sympathy? I am the only daughter of a well-respected medical family. I gave up a career at a major hospital in the capital to follow you to this remote place. For 3 years I have worked hard, cooked for you, washed your clothes, and made treatments for your health. In return, you take my care and hand it to another woman." "Mark Vance, do you have a conscience?" Eleanor quickly jumped in to defend him. "Clara, Mark meant well. That girl's health isn't good." "If she's sick, she should go to the hospital," I snapped back. "Not flirt with another woman's husband." "Watch your mouth," Eleanor shook with anger. "How can you say something like that?" I turned to her. "If you think Sophia Ross is such a wonderful girl, why don't you make her your daughter-in-law? Your son certainly seems to like her enough." Eleanor was trembling with rage. "You've gone too far." Mark gripped my hand even tighter. "Clara, I admit I made a mistake this time, but I swear nothing happened between us. Please believe me." "Believe you?" I let out another cold laugh. "Do you even believe yourself? Tell me, how many times have you visited the performing arts troupe this month? How long did you stay each time? When she calls you Mark, have you ever corrected her? Did you walk her back to her dorm, buy her late-night snacks, and practice dances with her until midnight? Do I need to list everything, one by one?" Mark's face turned deathly pale. He never expected me to know so much. In my previous life, I had only found out about these things when it was far too late, when all I could do was cry and scream. "Mark, is all of this true?" Eleanor looked at her son, stunned. Mark lowered his head. "Mom, that's enough." I yanked my wrist free from his grasp. "Let's get a divorce." The words hung in the air like a bomb. Both he and Eleanor were stunned into silence. "Divorce? No, absolutely not." Eleanor was the first to react. "Clara, don't be impulsive. Divorce is a serious matter for a woman. Once word gets out, your reputation will be ruined." I scoffed. My husband is carrying on with another woman, and you're worried about my reputation? Mark finally started to panic. Clara, don't talk about divorce. I swear I won't go to the performing arts troupe again. I won't see her anymore, okay? It's too late, I said, picking up the small bag I had packed. Some things, once they're broken, can't be fixed. I walked out of the Vance house with my luggage. Standing right in my path was Sophia Ross, holding a lunchbox. She had changed into fresh clothes and put on delicate makeup. The lunchbox in her hands was still steaming. She smiled sweetly at me. Sister-in-law, I brought lunch for Mark. He didn't eat anything at noon, and I was worried about his stomach. In my past life, she had shown up just like this, always at my lowest moments, with that innocent face saying the most hurtful things under the guise of kindness. I looked her up and down. Miss Ross, you've recovered quickly. This morning you were vomiting, and by the afternoon you're already cooking. She looked startled, then forced a smile. I'm feeling much better now, thank you. I leaned in slightly. Do you know what the military district just announced? She blinked, confused. No, what? I smiled. The commander's wife just spoke at the political department. She said there has been some inappropriate conduct lately, with certain performers not following discipline and flirting with married officers. Leadership has decided to conduct an investigation. Anyone found guilty will be expelled immediately. Of course, I had made that up, but Sophia didn't know that. Her face went pale in an instant. Is that true? Go ask around if you don't believe me, I said, giving her a long look. Miss Ross, there are some people you should never get involved with. Military marriages are protected by law. Breaking one up is a criminal offense. With that, I walked away, leaving her standing there. Behind me, I heard the sound of the lunchbox crashing to the ground and shattering. I returned to my parents' home. They both worked at the provincial medical university and had bought a small house near the military district for me. When I walked in with my luggage, my father, Robert Shaw, was reading the newspaper. He looked up and frowned. Why are you back? Dad, I said, my voice steady. I'm divorcing Mark. He put down his newspaper and looked at me seriously. What happened? I told him everything from beginning to end. He was silent for a long time after I finished. Have you thought this through? He finally asked. I have. Then do it, he said, standing up. Tomorrow, I'll talk to an old comrade of mine. We'll get the paperwork handled quickly. No one gets to bully my daughter. My mother, Helen, came out from the kitchen when she heard us talking, her eyes immediately turning red. I knew it, she said. We never should have let you marry into the military. I could tell from the start that Mark Vance was no good. Mom, don't cry. I tried to comfort her. This is a good thing. I'm cutting my losses early. Cutting your losses? She wiped her tears. You're already 25. What are you going to do after a divorce? I smiled. Mom, I'm a doctor. I have my skills and my career. My life doesn't end because of a man. The world will keep turning. And that was the truth. In my past life, Mark Vance and Sophia Ross had pushed me into a corner with nowhere to go until I died alone in the cold. This time, I was going to live, and live well, for myself. That same night, Mark came to the house. He stood outside for a long time. My father went out, spoke a few words to him, and Mark left looking defeated. The next day, a new story was spreading through the compound. Apparently, Sophia Ross had gone to the Vance house the night before to bring Mark dinner, only to be verbally torn apart by Eleanor. She had called her a shameless homewrecker. They said Sophia cried and insisted on her innocence, but Eleanor didn't believe a word and cursed her out in front of the whole neighborhood. In the end, Mark had to intervene and send Sophia away. But even that goodbye caused more trouble. Someone saw Mark helping her into a military jeep where they sat and talked for a long time before she left. That was the final straw. In a military compound, scandals involving personal conduct were taken more seriously than anything. A commanding officer being so familiar with an actress was a major problem. If word reached the higher-ups, his career would be over. Sure enough, on the third day, Mark was summoned to the political department for a disciplinary meeting. After he left, he came straight to my parents' house. This time, my dad let him in. Mark walked in, looking pale and tired. Clara, was it you? He asked, his voice strained. Did you report me to the political department? I was reading a medical journal and didn't even look up. That's a strange accusation, Captain Vance. You're afraid of people talking, but you weren't afraid of doing the things that get people talking. We never did anything, he insisted, his eyes red with frustration. Clara, if you keep this up, you'll ruin me. Ruin you? I finally looked up from my book. And who ruined our marriage first? My father gave a cold chuckle from his armchair. And you still have the nerve to show your face here. I've already arranged for the divorce papers. All you have to do is sign them. I'm not signing. Mark looked like a cornered animal. Mr. Shaw, I swear, I know I was wrong. Clara, just give me one more chance. Your promises are worthless to me, I cut in. You already swore you wouldn't go back to the performing arts troupe, and we all saw how that turned out. He had no response. Just then, there was a knock at the door. My mom opened it, and Mrs. Gable walked in. Godmother, I said, standing up. Sit down, she said, waving her hand before her eyes landed on Mark. Captain Vance, I see you're here. Mark stood up straight and saluted. Ma'am, I came to check on Clara. I'm here to check on her too, she said as she sat down. And to let you know that Sophia Ross from the Performing Arts Troupe has been officially reassigned. She's being sent to the Border Defense Troupe. The Border Defense Troupe was known as the harshest, most remote unit in the region. Once someone was sent there, they typically didn't come back for at least 3 years. Mark's face turned even whiter. Why? Why are they sending her there? My godmother sneered. She's a performer, not a soldier, but instead of focusing on her training, she spends her days hanging around your office. Do you think the military tolerates that kind of behavior? But she what? My godmother snapped. Mark Vance, you had better think very carefully. Do you want a future or do you want this woman? This time, the military is taking this seriously. Anyone who challenges the rules of discipline might as well just take off their uniform now. Then she turned to me. Clara, the organization has also made a decision. If you are willing, you can be transferred to the Provincial Military Hospital. The facilities are much better, and it will be easier for you to continue your studies. My eyes lit up. Really? Of course, your skills are well known. They've been wanting to recruit you for a while. I'm willing, I said without a moment's hesitation. Mark's panic was plain on his face. Clara, you can't leave. We aren't even divorced yet. You're still my wife. Not for long, my dad said, pulling a document from the coffee table. Here is the divorce agreement. Just sign it and we can all move on. Mark didn't even look at it. I'm not signing, not even if I die. Fine, said my godmother as she stood up. Then Clara will be transferred as a military spouse. Once she is in the provincial capital and you're stuck here, you'll be officially separated for 3 years. She can file for divorce at any time then, and no one will be able to stop her. Mark, I'm telling you for your own good. Don't push this any further, she said coldly. If this gets any bigger, it won't end well for anyone. Mark slumped to the floor, defeated. He knew that this time it was really over. It wasn't just his marriage, but also the bright military future he had always been so proud of. Just then, a frantic knock came at the door. Captain Vance! Captain Vance! Something has happened. It was Mark's adjutant. My mom opened the door, and the young man burst in, panting. Captain, it's Sophia Ross. She tried to slit her wrists. The news spread through the compound like wildfire. Word was that she had done it because she couldn't handle being transferred to the border. In a moment of desperation, she had cut her wrists in her dorm room. Luckily, her roommate found her in time and she was saved after being rushed to the hospital. Mark didn't even think. He bolted toward the door. Stop right there, my father's voice boomed. Mark Vance, if you walk out that door now, don't blame me for what happens next. Mark froze. He turned and looked at me, his eyes full of desperation. Clara, if something happens to her. What happens to her has nothing to do with me, I said coldly. She is an adult. She has to take responsibility for her own choices. But, no buts. My godmother stood up. Mark Vance, I'm giving you 2 choices right now. 1, you sign the divorce papers and you 2 part ways peacefully. 2, you refuse to sign and the organization will reassign you to the border unit along with Sophia Ross. You choose. It was a blunt, ruthless threat, but it was very effective. Mark looked as pale as a ghost. He knew she was serious. If he was sent to the border, it would be the end of his career. The shining promise of being the youngest regimental commander would vanish, replaced by endless years in a remote, forgotten outpost. His adjutant was still standing at the doorway, waiting anxiously, but Mark seemed frozen in place. After a long pause, he finally closed his eyes and muttered, "I'll sign." My father immediately handed him the divorce agreement. Mark's hand trembled as he scribbled his name. The signature was barely legible, but it was done. Afterward, he looked at me with a deep, sorrowful expression. "Clara, I'm sorry." Then he left with his adjutant. I knew he was going to the hospital to see her. It was the same as in my last life. Sophia would cry and throw a fit, and Mark would forget everything else to comfort her. But this time, I didn't care anymore. "Congratulations," my godmother said, patting my shoulder. "You're free now." I smiled. "Thank you, godmother." "No need to thank me," she said. "You earned this yourself. The transfer to the provincial military hospital has been approved. You can report there next month. That's a bigger platform. It will take you further." After she left, my mom hugged me and cried. My dad sat to the side, smoking his pipe silently. Through the haze of smoke, I saw him quietly wipe the corner of his eye. "Dad, Mom, I'm fine," I said with a smile, trying to comfort them. This is a new beginning. Yes, a new beginning. In my past life, I was trapped in Mark Vance's shadow, wasting away until I died miserably. But in this life, I was going to walk forward and see the wider world that existed beyond him. That night, new gossip spread. Sophia Ross had caused a huge scene at the hospital, claiming she had tried to end her life for Mark and demanding that he take responsibility for her. Mark was called in for a second conversation with the political department. The result was that he was officially removed from his post as regimental commander and reassigned to a desk job at headquarters. His rank wasn't lowered, but everyone knew his path to promotion had been permanently blocked. And Sophia didn't get what she wanted either. Her suicide attempt was labeled as a deliberate defiance of an organizational reassignment, and she was ordered to report to the border troop early. When Eleanor heard that her son had been removed from his position, she fainted. When she came to, the first thing she did was storm over to our house screaming, "Clara Shaw, you wicked woman, you ruined my son." She barged in, her hair a mess and her face contorted with rage. But I stepped forward and blocked her path. "Mrs. Vance, please show some respect," my father said, following behind me. "It was your son who wronged Clara first." "Wronged her?" Eleanor shouted, her eyes red. "They didn't do anything. It was just a batch of herbal soup. Does that justify destroying his entire career?" "Just a batch of soup?" I scoffed. "Aunt Eleanor, you really go to great lengths to defend your son. Do you know that he was staying out late every night with another woman? Do you know that he bought things for her, drove her back to her dorm, and held her in his car? You don't know any of that. All you care about is your son. What about me? Was I supposed to just accept his betrayal and suffer in silence?" Eleanor had no response. She just stood there, stunned and speechless. On the day I left the military district, Mark came to see me off. He looked worn down and thin, his eyes sunken and a scruffy beard on his face. "Clara!" he called out to me. I stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice low and hoarse. "I know it's too late to say anything, but I truly regret everything." I finally turned to face him. "Mark, what is it that you regret? Losing me or losing your future?" He couldn't answer. "I heard Sophia left," I said. He nodded. "Before she was sent to the border, she came to see me. She said she really liked me," he said with a bitter smile. "But I realize now that I was only drawn to her for a moment. It wasn't real." "So what?" I looked him in the eye. "Some mistakes can't be undone, Mark. When you make them, you have to pay the price." His eyes turned red. "Is there really no chance for us?" "None." My answer was firm. In my past life, I had given him countless chances, and all I got in return was him and Sophia together while I froze to death in a blizzard. This life, I would not make the same mistake. The train slowly pulled away from the station. I sat by the window watching Mark's figure grow smaller and smaller on the platform. He just stood there, motionless like a statue. I turned away, opened the medical journal in my lap, and focused on the future. The provincial military hospital and a new life were waiting for me. When I arrived in the provincial capital, I moved into the dormitory the hospital had arranged for me. My new colleagues were welcoming, and they were impressed when they heard I had been the youngest attending physician at my previous post. The department head, Dr. Evans, was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s. "Dr. Shaw," she said to me one morning, "I hear you're quite skilled in medicinal nutrition." "Yes," I nodded. "I've learned some traditional family recipes." "Excellent," her eyes lit up. "We're currently working on a wellness project for the military, and we need someone with your exact skills." Just like that, I threw myself into my new work. During the day, I saw patients and did my rounds. At night, I studied herbal formulas and developed new prescriptions. My life was full and busy. Sometimes my past would cross my mind, but I was mostly looking forward to the future. A month later, I received a letter from my old colleague, David. He wrote that Mark was not doing well. Since being reassigned to a desk job, he had changed. He spent most of his free time drinking. Eleanor had been asking everyone she knew for help, trying to get her son's old position back, but no one was willing to get involved. As for Sophia Sanders, David wrote that life at the border was harsh. There was no applause or flowers, just wind, sand, and loneliness. She had written letters to Mark, but he hadn't replied to a single one. I folded the letter and put it away. It didn't stir any emotion in me. That was all in the past. "Dr. Shaw," the department head called from the hallway. A nurse pushed the door open. "Doctor, they need you." "I'm coming," I answered, already on my feet. I went to the department head's office. When I opened the door, there was a young male military officer inside with Dr. Evans. "Clara," Dr. Evans smiled. "Let me introduce you. This is Dr. Leo Maxwell from the General Military Hospital. He's here for a 3-month exchange program." Then she turned to him. "Dr. Maxwell, this is Dr. Clara Shaw from our department." He stood up and extended his hand. "It's nice to meet you. I'm Leo Maxwell." I shook his hand. It was warm and firm. "Dr. Maxwell is a specialist in internal medicine," Dr. Evans added. "While he's here, I'd like you to show him around and help him get settled." "Of course," I nodded. As we stepped out of the office, Leo smiled. "I heard that your work in medicinal nutrition is very well known." I paused. "How did you hear about that?" "I have a friend stationed in your previous district. He mentioned you. He said you were someone with very strong principles." I smiled. "That's very kind of him." Leo's arrival brought a new energy to our department. He was highly skilled but always humble, and he fit in quickly. We often discussed cases together. His knowledge of internal medicine was impressive, and my understanding of medicinal cuisine seemed to surprise him. "Clara," he asked me one day after rounds, "have you ever thought about systemizing your work on medicinal meal therapy?" "Systemizing it?" I echoed. "Yeah," he said seriously. "Document it, create a structure for it. Eventually, it could be expanded across the entire military medical system. It could do a lot of good." His words sparked something in me, but that would require a lot of clinical data. "I can help with that," he said with a smile. "The General Hospital has the resources, and you have the expertise. We'd make a great team." And just like that, we started working together. By day, we handled our regular hospital duties. By night, we compiled notes, ran experiments, and logged data. Some nights, we worked so late that he would make noodles for us in the small staff kitchen. "You're an internal medicine specialist who can cook?" I teased him. He laughed sheepishly. "When you live alone for a long time, you have to learn to take care of yourself." I later learned that he was 32 and still single, not for a lack of interest from others, but because he had dedicated all of his time to medicine. "What about you?" he asked one evening as we were working. "I heard you're divorced." My pen paused. "Yes. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked." "It's okay," I said calmly. "It's in the past." He was quiet for a moment. "That man must really regret losing you." I looked up. He was already looking at me, his gaze soft and focused. I looked away. "Whether he regrets it or not is his business. It has nothing to do with me." Time passed quickly. Before I knew it, Leo's 3-month exchange was coming to an end. The day before he was scheduled to return to the general hospital, we finished our first research report, Preliminary Military Wellness Through Medicinal Nutrition, authored by Clara Shaw and Leo Maxwell. He read the title aloud. Clara, this is just the beginning. The beginning of what? I asked. He looked at me with a deep, serious expression. The beginning of many things. The next day, when I went with him to the train station, he slipped an envelope into my hand. What's this? I asked. Open it when you get back. As the train pulled away, I waved goodbye, but my chest felt empty, as if something important had just been taken away. Back in my dorm room, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The photo was of the two of us in the lab. I was focused on a microscope, and he was standing beside me, looking at me with a gentle smile. The letter had only one line. Clara, wait for me. I pinned the photo to the board above my desk, and for the first time in a long, long time, a strange, new feeling stirred inside me. So this is what it feels like to start to fall for someone. 2 months later, Leo came back. But this time, it wasn't for an exchange. It was a permanent transfer to our hospital. Why? I asked, surprised. Isn't the general hospital a better platform for your career? He smiled and looked directly at me. What's the point of a better platform if it doesn't have you on it? My cheeks flushed. Dr. Evans, who was standing nearby, chuckled. Leo, it looks like your interest isn't just professional. Leo admitted it without hesitation. You have sharp eyes, Director. From that day on, he began to openly court me. He brought me flowers, drove me to and from work, and we ate our meals together and continued our research. His way of pursuing me was gentle and unhurried, like a soft spring rain that quietly nourishes the ground. Just when my life seemed to be falling perfectly into place, Mark showed up again. That night, I was on the late shift. He stumbled into the duty room, drunk and reeking of alcohol. Clara, he slurred, leaning against the doorframe. Clara, I frowned. Why are you here? I came to see you. He staggered toward me. Clara, I miss you so much. You're drunk, I said, reaching for the call button on the desk. I'll have someone from security take you back. No. He suddenly grabbed my hand. Clara, I was wrong. I really was. Please forgive me. Let's get back together. I yanked my hand away. Mark, we are already divorced. So what? We can remarry, he said, his eyes red. Clara, I've spent the last 6 months in regret. Without you, I'm just a walking corpse. That's your problem, I said coldly. Just then, the door opened. It was the duty nurse with Leo standing right behind her. He stepped into the room, took one look at the scene, and his brow furrowed. Do you need some help? Mark squinted at him, clearly intoxicated. Who are you? I'm Leo Maxwell, Clara's colleague, he said calmly, stepping between us without a moment's hesitation. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Mark scoffed. Colleague? Does it look like you're just a colleague to me? Whether we are or not is none of your business, Leo replied evenly. Security is on their way. I suggest you leave on your own. Mark opened his mouth to argue again, but 2 security guards arrived just in time. Please escort this man out, Leo instructed. As the guards hauled him away, Mark shouted back, Clara, I won't give up on you. Once he was gone, Leo turned to me. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said, shaking my head. Thanks. No need to thank me, he said gently. But if anything like this happens again, please tell me immediately. His words were warm and reassuring. Okay, I said. The next day, Mark came back, sober this time. He was dressed in a suit and holding a bouquet of roses. Clara, he said earnestly, I'm sorry about last night. I really do want us to get back together. Mark, that's enough, I said, feeling exhausted. We're over. Why won't you give me a second chance? He asked, his voice full of emotion. Is it because of Leo Maxwell? This has nothing to do with Leo, I replied firmly. Even if he didn't exist, I still wouldn't get back together with you. Mark, we are adults, and adults have to be responsible for their choices. You chose dishonesty and betrayal, and now you are dealing with the consequences. I am not a saint. I will not repay betrayal with kindness. Still unwilling to give up, he said, Clara, I can wait. I'll wait until the day you forgive me. Then wait, I said, turning and walking away. Mark's pestering continued for a month. He brought flowers, sent letters, and waited outside the hospital. He even went to my parents' house to plead with them. My father threw him out. Get lost, he told him. My daughter has nothing more to do with you. My mother's expression was like ice. Mark, a person needs to have some self-respect. Think about how you treated Clara before. You have a lot of nerve showing your face here now. Not giving up, he went to find Leo. Dr. Maxwell, he said, I know you have feelings for Clara, but she and I have 3 years of history together. Don't you think you're being the third wheel here? Leo just smiled. Mr. Vance, a third party is someone who interferes in an existing relationship. You two are already divorced. There is no such thing as a third party anymore. He paused, then added, and from what I understand, the real third party in your marriage wasn't me. Mark's face turned grim. That was all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Leo's smile faded. Captain Vance, a real man, owns up to what he has done. You made your choices. You should take responsibility for them, not make excuses. Clara is a wonderful woman. If you didn't cherish her, it's only natural that someone else will. Mark finally stopped, not because he was convinced, but because he had been assigned to a mission and was leaving for 6 months. Right before he left, he came to see me one last time. Clara, he said, with new resolve in his eyes, wait for me. When I return, I will prove myself to you. I said nothing. In my heart, I knew that some things, once missed, are missed forever. After he left, my relationship with Leo grew deeper and steadier. We completed our second research paper together and presented it at a national military medical conference, where it was met with wide acclaim. Congratulations, Dr. Shaw, Leo said afterward, handing me a bouquet of lilies. Your dream has come true. It's our dream, I corrected him. His eyes sparkled. Our. I like the sound of that. I nodded. Yeah, ours. That evening, the moonlight was beautiful. We took a walk in the small garden behind the hospital. Leo stopped suddenly and turned to me. Clara, he said seriously, will you be my girlfriend? I looked into his sincere eyes and thought about everything we had been through. His kindness, his patience, his respect. Every small detail had made me feel safe and valued. Yes, I whispered. His face lit up like a young boy's. He gently took my hand, and the warmth from his palm went straight to my heart. Our relationship quickly became public knowledge. Our colleagues congratulated us, saying we were a perfect match. When my parents found out, they came all the way to the city just to meet Leo. Over dinner, my father asked him seriously, Leo, are you serious about my daughter? Yes, sir, Leo replied without hesitation. I want to marry Clara and build a home with her. My mother nodded with satisfaction. He's a good man, Clara. Don't let him go. I blushed and nodded. 6 months passed in a flash. Mark returned. He was tanner and thinner, but he seemed mentally stronger. Clara, I've been awarded a second-class merit, he told me, his eyes gleaming. My record has been cleared. Congratulations, I said calmly. He took a deep breath. I've spent 6 months proving myself. Can I have another chance now? I looked him straight in the eyes and said clearly, Mark, I have a boyfriend now. His face turned pale. Is it Leo? It is. Clara, I cut him off. I wish you all the best, Mark. I hope you find someone who is right for you. I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard him call out, Clara, are you happy? I paused, turned around, and smiled. Very happy. Yes, I am. Leo has given me everything I ever wanted: respect, understanding, companionship, and love. A month later, Leo proposed to me. It was on the hospital rooftop at sunset. He got down on one knee and took out a ring. Clara, will you marry me? The setting sun cast a golden glow on his face, and his eyes were full of only me. I will, I said. He stood and embraced me tightly, whispering in my ear, Thank you for giving me this chance. I love you. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of his arms surround me. For the first time, I felt a happiness that was steady and secure. The pain from my past life had finally become just that, the past. In this life, I would cherish the one who truly loved me and live well. We set our wedding for the autumn. It was a simple, warm, and intimate ceremony with no extravagance, just close friends and family. On the day of the ceremony, my father held my hand and passed me to Leo. His eyes read, "Leo, I'm entrusting Clara to you." "You have my word, sir," Leo said solemnly. "I will take care of her always. I will spend my whole life loving her." When we exchanged rings, I saw my godmother in the audience, wiping away tears. She had watched me grow up, knew everything I had been through, and had now witnessed my rebirth. "Clara has truly found her happiness," I heard her say to someone nearby. Yes, I had. Married life was calm and beautiful. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment assigned by the military district. It wasn't large, but it was warm and filled with love. Leo took over all the housework. "Your hands are meant to heal people, not wash dishes," he always told me. Our work in medicinal nutrition also had a breakthrough. The military hospital established a dedicated medicinal wellness department, and I was appointed as its director. "Congratulations, Director Shaw," Leo teased me. "So from now on, I have to call you boss?" I laughed. "Only at the hospital." He leaned in. "Then at home, I'll just call you my wife." And so our days passed, ordinary but full of joy. Until one day, I ran into Sophia Ross at the hospital. She had just returned from the border and looked completely worn out. "Dr. Shaw," she called out to me. I stopped. "Do you need something?" I just wanted to apologize," she said, her head bowed. "For everything that happened back then. I'm sorry." I looked her over. 3 years at the border had stripped away her former softness. Her skin was rough, her face aged. "It's in the past," I said calmly. "I know you won't forgive me," she murmured. "I just wanted to say that you were right. Some people shouldn't be touched." "At least you understand now," I replied. "Better late than never." She lifted her eyes, which were filled with envy. "I heard you were married and that you're very happy." "Yes," I said. "I am." "That's really great," she hesitated. "If only we could start over." "There are no what-ifs in life," I cut her off. "Look ahead, Sophia." As I walked away, I turned for one last glance. She stood there, small and frail, looking somewhat pitiful, but I didn't feel sympathy. Everyone has to pay for their choices. That night, I told Leo what happened. He wrapped his arms around me. "Are you upset?" I shook my head. "No, just reflective." "About what?" I paused for a moment, then said, "About how unpredictable life is and how lucky I am to have met you." He smiled and kissed my forehead. "Meeting you was the greatest blessing of my life." Time flew by, and soon it was the spring of 1985. One morning, while heading to work at the hospital, I suddenly felt lightheaded. Leo caught me, alarmed. "What's wrong? Are you feeling sick?" "I'm fine, probably just didn't sleep well," I reassured him. Still worried, he insisted on taking me for a checkup. When the results came back, the doctor smiled. "You're pregnant. Congratulations, you're 6 weeks along." "Pregnant? Really?" Leo's hands trembled with excitement. "Yes," the doctor nodded. "Congratulations to you both." As we left the exam room, Leo held onto me like I was made of glass. "Don't be so nervous," I chuckled. "I'm pregnant, not dying." "How can I not be nervous?" he said, completely serious. "From today on, you're not lifting a finger. You just rest and take care of our baby." The news spread quickly. My parents were overjoyed and rushed over the very next day. My godmother sent over nourishing supplements. My colleagues all came to congratulate me, teasing that I was blessed with a double joy, since our research project had just won first prize in the military district's Scientific Advancement Awards. I gently placed a hand over my still flat belly, feeling completely content. In my previous life, I had died at my most hopeless point. But in this life, I had a husband who truly loved me, and soon I would have a child of my own. Thank you, Heaven, for giving me a second chance. My pregnancy went smoothly. Leo was more nervous than I was, buying stacks of parenting books and reading to our baby every night. Our days passed in sweet anticipation, until one day I received an unexpected phone call. "Is this Dr. Shaw?" a voice asked. "This is the 3rd Military Hospital. We have a patient named Mark Vance in critical condition. He said only you can save him." I froze. Leo took the phone from my hand. After getting the details, his face turned solemn. "It's a sudden heart attack," he told me, "brought on by chronic myocarditis from years of heavy drinking and exhaustion." He looked at me. "Do you want to go?" I was quiet for a long moment. "Let's go see him." When we arrived at the hospital, Mark was lying on the bed, as pale as a sheet. When he saw me, he managed a weak smile. "Clara, you came." "What happened to you?" I asked, frowning. His doctor explained, "Long-term alcoholism led to myocarditis. He overworked himself, and it triggered heart failure." I looked at him, a mixture of anger and frustration bubbling up inside me. "Mark, how did you let yourself get like this?" He gave a bitter smile. "Without you, it didn't really matter how I lived." "Mark," I said, exasperated, "you're destroying yourself." He looked into my eyes, his gaze calm now. "Clara, seeing that you're doing well, that's enough for me." "Don't talk," I said gently. "Just focus on getting better." He shook his head. "I probably won't make it." "Don't say that." "I mean it," he said, his breath shaky. "I just wanted to see you one last time, to say I'm sorry." He then turned his gaze to Leo. "Dr. Maxwell, please take good care of her. She's the best woman I've ever known. She deserves the best kind of love." Leo grasped his hand. "I will." Mark smiled faintly, and then he closed his eyes. The heart monitor let out a sharp, piercing alarm. Doctors and nurses rushed in to try and resuscitate him, and I was escorted out of the room. I leaned against Leo's chest, and tears streamed silently down my face, not because I still loved him, but because a piece of my youth, a painful chapter of my life, had just passed away with him. In the end, Mark didn't make it. At the funeral, his mother, Eleanor, wept as if her heart was broken. In just one night, she seemed to have aged 10 years. "It's my fault," she sobbed, clutching my hand. "Clara, it's all my fault." "It's all in the past, Eleanor," I said softly. "Please, take care of yourself." Many of Mark's old comrades came to the funeral. Though his career had faltered, they still remembered him fondly. "What a pity," someone said. "He could have had such a promising future." Nathan and I stood quietly at the edge of the crowd and bowed our heads in silence. On the way home, Nathan asked me, "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" "If you had forgiven him back then." "There's no what if," I interrupted. "Leo, I don't regret anything. Everyone has to live with the consequences of their choices. He chose betrayal, and I chose to walk away. If I had to do it all over again, I would still make the same choice." He gripped my hand tightly. "Thank you for choosing me." I squeezed his hand back. "No, thank you for showing me what real love feels like." Mark's death was the final punctuation mark on my past. It truly brought that chapter to a close, leaving me free to fully embrace the life I had built, a life of peace, respect, and a love that was steady and true.
Oh, fellow Aussie here. Making university marking so much nicer. What are you marking? And hi. I live in California now, sadly. But Valerie! Hi, my love. Nice to see you. How you been? The rehearsal. Thank you, Claude. The rehearsal. Yeah. The rehearsal was crazy town. First year Japanese tests. So I was telling chat the other day that that in Australia, like, we learn Japanese. That's like the most commonly taught language in school. And here you are, proving the point. That's awesome. Heck yeah. Yeah, I learned Japanese as a kid. Sonika! Thank you for the follow. Welcome in. Hajimemashite. Watashi wa Xanthi. Just tired. That's fair. Just gonna look. Thank you for being here, Hoolery. Love you. Izizat! Thank you for the follow. Welcome. Konnichiwa. Anime and manga did some great work for us. Yeah, seriously. My first Japanese test made me cry. I was in first year of university. Stop. Do you do that boy oi live every time, or is that it's the sound alert and then I do it? Watashi wa Brandi-san desu. I can't do it. Both. It's both. The bird does it and then I do it. I remember we would have to say, toire e itemoi desu ka? And then the teacher would say, hai, ii desu. And that was, may I go to the toilet? If I unfollow and follow, would Pinion do the sound effect again? We have someone who does